Okay, so I'm going to try and show the features of how I changed the cartridge annealer controller from the one that I found on the on YouTube, and just show what I changed. So one of the problems I noticed was the fact that the flame, which would be here, passes, firing onto the cartridge, which would be sitting here, but because the flame's in this location, and because the this cartridge catcher, or brass catcher as he calls it, is mounted down in this corner and loops up over here, the heat from the flame, seems to heat this up a bit, and you can see in this case that the cadmium coating here was starting to get burned off because of the flame. So I redid the brass catcher initially just by taking the original brass catcher, getting a ferrule, a crimping ferrule for cable out of the hardware store. It costs about 90 cents. They're kind of in a figure 8 shape, and I cut it about a third of it off because it was too long, and took another piece of U-bolt and cut off all the threads and shortened it and matched it to where it would actually come in from the drum instead of going into the drum near the flame. So this keeps the flame from getting onto this metal work and transmitting to the aluminum chassis. It doesn't get too hot at this point for short uses, but it got pretty hot. I couldn't touch the metal here, without getting burned. So I made the thing that way. That just extends it and gets it out of the way of the flame. Then this drum, being about 1.25 inches deep, works very well depth-wise for even 3006 cases. And I don't think I have a 308 case, but it's about a ½ inch shorter. It works okay, and can work for 5.56 or 203, but the flame's pretty close to the drum. So I wanted to, especially for shorter cases such as a Grendel, I wanted to get it to where the neck actually was exposed without having to cut a whole new drum. I did, however, buy another drum I was going to cut down to 1 inch or so, maybe 7/8, so that I could do these cases by changing the drum. But since this was already getting hot, I modified it. And what I came up with was I needed a little flag, or a little offset that kept the case from going so deep into the drum, and that's what I did. I just cut a piece of Kydex, wrapped it around the shaft here, so that just enough so it would clip on and off, so I can take this on and off pretty easily just by turning this out, lifting up on this corner, holding this in place, and it pops right off. But if I press it back like that, it will take the casings that comes from here and put it out to the correct length. And to change the feed ramp over here, which is the proper depth for 3006, I took this thermometer cover off of my oven thermometer. It's already got a clip on it, and I just found that I can clip it here, and it adds spacing for these short cartridges, so they sit like that. And if I turn up the drum, you'll see that as I feed in the cases, it does it pretty good, and it holds the neck and the shoulder away from the drum, so it shouldn't overheat. And so I can just keep feeding them in one by one. One by one is good. I was going to make a trip mechanism to, allow to stack a whole bunch of cartridges here, but actually this turns out better than hoped for. Just single in there gives you more control. Now if I want to switch down to 223 at this short cartridge setting, it still works pretty good. Sometimes it wobbles. I have to work on that a little bit, but it basically works and provides more clearance for the heat between where the neck is being heated in the drum. So it seems to work pretty good. Pretty simple. I also added, see if I can get a picture of it here, a little extra ramp to my feed ramp. I added this little tab, which just helps keep the cartridge from bouncing a little bit sometimes. Not a big deal. As far as the feed ramp, I made mine out of Kydex. So there's 3 or 4 layers back here that space the ramp out away from the base of the chassis so that it properly clears the edge here as the cartridge rolls in. And it's just screwed in place with a couple of screws. I drilled and tapped the casing. And see if I can get a little more light in here. This is my GoPro, and my phone is not working at the moment, so I can't use that camera. Anyways, you know, just I can adjust these screws, open up the holes a little bit, and move the ramp back and forth as I need. But basically, I've been able to feed everything just in one setting. So the other thing I wanted to do was get to where I could take the blue cover off the black chassis and not have wires extended between the 2 chassis. So I put the power plug up here instead of in the back of the chassis. Put the power button over here. I move the knob, the control, speed control from the side over to here. And that's basically, I can take the cover off and run the thing or play around with it and not have any wires extending between the 2 pieces of chassis. That works pretty good. The other thing I did was, instead of using a power box to cover the motor in the back, I just found a furniture foot cover, or protector, floor protector, and they got them in the hardware store, 1.5 inch diameter, and it just bored the hole a little bit big. I think it was 1 3/4 inch hole, had a hole saw, and I shoved the power or the foot on it, so that pretty well does that. The thing is protected. I can get to it. It protects the wires, and I can also get this cover off without taking any screws off. I'm sure the other one with the blue cover on there, you can take it off without taking the blue cover loose, but I just kind of like that. It was, for me, simpler, and I had parts. I had things around. This Kydex ramp I used, had existing Kydex from a holster project, and so I just made it, out of that. It seems to work very well, and it's just don't want to get heat towards it, so of course the torch has to go in this direction all the time. And this little flap here that works for the short cartridges, it doesn't seem to get hot, especially, my big concern was with these little short guys. Having the plastic get hot is going to be a big problem. So I just, there's a little chassis plug here that, fender well covers are held in by that, so you can get them in a hardware store for 25 cents or something like that. Other than that, the rest of it, I'm using the extra drum as my catch pan, and the torch is the same basic setup, except I only use 1 nut down here instead of 2, and some silicone rubber hose that screws up to the nut, holds it all in place. I can adjust it, rotate it, shorten and lengthen it as necessary. Works very good. So its basic design was very simple, followed the KISS principle to the letter, and I don't know, what else can you say? When it works well, it works well, and it always works well, so far. And it'll run down very slow. I mean, I could run it around here, but I can actually slow this thing down to very slow crawl speed. If I get it too slow, sometimes it'll trip in like that. Can't see that it does that all the time. But, there it goes. So, seems to work. Long cases, I just take this piece out here, and I take this piece out here, and then it works as originally designed. So this is my modification for